Hi everyone, it's Jessica again. Today I am working on a one-page scrapbook layout. It is for a picture that I am using of my husband and my son from my daughter's birthday party a few years ago. And for this particular layout, I really wanted to use the mix-in papers that are current right now in the July and August catalog because it doesn't matter what catalog it is, but for some reason my favorite papers are always the mix-in papers. I love how they are colorful and yet still sort of neutral in their patterns, and then they just work so well not only with the other two paper packs that are in the catalog but also on their own. So for this particular layout, I'm using this grid paper as my background, and then I wanted to add some splotches, if you will, behind where my other papers are going to go. So I pulled out an older stamp set called Watercolor Impressions. There are a couple other stamp sets similar to this that are current right now, or if you have something in your stash, it's just kind of a way to add some background behind where your papers are going to be on the paper. So I took my Lagoon ink and just kind of stamped around where my papers are going to be, and just kind of made these little splotches to bring out some of that turquoise color that is in this mix-in paper, because frankly anything that's turquoise or aqua is my favorite color, and so I really wanted to highlight that. Plus you can see in the picture of my husband and my son that there's a lot of blue in it, and so again I wanted to kind of bring some of that out. So now that I've stamped those splotches around in the background of where my paper is going to be, I go ahead and put my other pieces down. Now all of these pieces, like I said, come from that mix-in paper pack, which is current right now. And in fact, the bottom strip that I'm going to put on is one of the zip strips from the top of the paper, but the other ones are just pattern papers from that mix-in pack. And to put them on, you can see I've got my layout right now sitting on my Versamat, which is a really handy tool because it has those grid lines on there. So since I knew that my strips of paper were 9 inches long and I wanted to center them on the paper, I could just kind of go up to 1.5 and then kind of slide down and eyeball where I was going to put it. So the other thing that I wanted to use for this particular layout was my Gnome Matter stamp set, because I just got it, and the other day my daughter and I were playing around with it, and we had cut out some of the gnomes and the hedgehogs and we were practicing coloring them, and I hadn't used this particular gnome yet on any sort of project. So I also pulled out my Beautiful Skies stamp set, which was from the May and June catalog, and I thought about, well, what else can I stamp and cut out here with my thin cuts so that I can kind of add some embellishments to my paper. So I pulled out a couple of things, and you can see here I'm just going to use my Cuttlebug. That Blue Sky stamp set is awesome because everything on it has a thin cut, and so there are lots of different options. So I pulled out 2 of the different leaf patterns and then also the banner, and I cut everything twice. And then I pulled out my Gnome Matter thin cuts, and I cut out the sunflower and the other gnome that I didn't already have colored and ready to go. So now that I've got all of my cuts ready, I'm ready to stamp, and then I'm going to move into coloring them. So I'm not entirely sure where I'm going to put all these things on my layout yet, but I just kind of wanted to have them made so that I could play around with, where I might like them and if I'm going to use them. It does turn out that I don't actually use these leaves that I am stamping, but at this point I didn't really know that yet. So the colors that I have in this mix-in paper are New England Ivy and Fern, and I don't have the Fern ink pad, but I do have New England Ivy. Mine was actually one of the older pads, but I still have that color. And so I pulled out Topiary, which is another green shade that we used to carry, and it's just a little bit lighter than that New England Ivy. So I stamped my leaves in those 2 different shades of green, but like I said, I don't actually end up using them on my layout, even though I try really hard to find a place to put them in. And then I'm going to use my Intense Black ink pad to stamp both the gnome and the sunflower. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm going to color them with my alcohol markers, with my Tri-Blend and Shinhan alcohol markers. And so the Intense Black is really the best stamp pad to use for that, because that way the black ink color won't bleed when you are coloring with the markers. And then I used a Lagoon to color the 2 banners, to stamp the 2 banners. So here you can see, now that I've got everything stamped up, I'm going to go ahead and start coloring. Now my marker collection is kind of a mix up of some of the old Shinhan markers that we used to carry, and then also I have a couple of the newer Tri-Blend markers. I actually, as much as I love my Shinhan markers, I really love the Tri-Blends more. I'm glad that Close to My Heart moved to them. And the reason is you can see on here on this marker, not this one that I'm using at the moment, but the last one I was using, that it actually has 3 different parts to it. So it goes from light, medium to dark. So it's very easy to do shading. Now, what I'm doing here, because these are my older Shinhan ones, is I'm just kind of taking a lighter and a darker marker that are in the same tone, and I'm just kind of coloring multiple times over the same spot, so that way I can do the shading with my older markers. But the Trilon markers, you don't have to worry about that because you have all 3 different shades in the same marker, and so it's really easy to color and make things look really cool and shaded. And then what you do is you just kind of go over, as the last touch, you take it and go over it with the light side of the marker one last time, and it blends everything in. So here with my Shinhan marker, I'm just kind of doing that same sort of idea by going over and over and over again the parts that I want to be darker, and then not over the parts that I want to be lighter. But like I said, much easier with those tri-blend markers. So I color my gnome, and then I'm going to color in the sunflower as well. And then that way I have these guys ready to be my embellishments. And so for this page, like I said, it's a picture of my husband and my son, and it was from my daughter's birthday party. And I didn't really have any other pictures of my son from that day except for this one. So I didn't want it to be like a birthday party sort of layout for him, because that really didn't capture what his picture was. And so I just kind of wanted to focus on instead the picture of the 2 of them together. They're the 2 guys. You know, I have 2 daughters and there's me, so they're kind of the 2 guys of the family. And these gnomes are so cute, and I just thought, you know, what a fun way to kind of use them on a scrapbook layout. I've seen a lot of really darling ways that people have used them on cards, but you know, I think that they work really well for scrapbook pages too. And so it's just kind of, I used them in a masculine way. And I just colored the 2 guys since I have 2 guys in my picture. So here you can see where now I have taken all of those thin cuts that I have stamped and colored, and I spent a really long time moving things around and just trying to figure out where I might want things to go. And like I said, I try really hard to use those 4 different thin cuts that I did of the green leaves, but they don't work. And same thing with my banners. I like the banners and I do use them ultimately, but it takes me a while to figure out where I want to put them. So after much moving around, and I finally decided to put the 2 banners underneath the picture, and then I moved my 2 gnomes down to the bottom right hand corner. And I apologize because as I was working on this page, I didn't realize that I had shifted my Versamat and my scrapbook page down closer towards me and out of the range of the camera, so that you can't really see that bottom part too terribly well. So I apologize about that. But like I said, what I'm going to do is move these gnome guys down after much debating right there. And the reason I did decide to put them there is one of those little splotches that I had stamped in Lagoon ink just to the left of the other gnome that has his yellow hat on. And I kind of liked how it was right there. It just kind of seemed to draw the eye to that area of the page and kind of filled in some of that white space, so to speak. And then I decided to take the hedgehog and put him so it looked like he was reaching out toward the sunflower. And originally I had the hedgehog moved over so it looked like he was holding the sunflower, but then it really kind of covered up that leaf, and I wanted to be able to see the leaf on the sunflower. So I just kind of put them up there, and then I put the hedgehog on with some foam tape so that he is popped up, but all the other guys are just kind of down. The banners are on foam tape too. And then I put my picture up on foam tape as well. And then I just take my Gnome Matter stamp set and kind of pull out some of those little stamps that are on there. I used the hearts. They're both kind of small, but one heart is a little bit bigger than the other. I used both of the hearts and stamped around the page with some sapphire ink. And then I also there are a couple of different options with like grass and flowers and some really cute tiny little stamps. And I took one of those, and I'm going to stamp that actually in 2 different colors. So first I took it and I stamped it in green so that I could capture the grass and the leaf and the stem of the flower on that little stamp. And then it was kind of too small of a stamp to do some masking with, so I just was really careful as I was putting ink on it. And then I took the flower part of that little stamp and I stamped it in Lagoon. And I put that down next to my little gnomes. And like I said, I apologize. I didn't realize I had shifted things down so far that you couldn't really see. So that's what I did down there in that corner. And then, of course, I am all about my shimmer brushes right now. So I pull out a scrap piece of paper to kind of cover up that picture and protect it a little bit. And I take my Lagoon shimmer brush and I get some juice flowing on it. And then I take it and I just tap it on my finger, and it kind of splatters some of the ink and the shimmer from that, which I thought worked out really well considering I had those splotches on there, and it just really it matched that same sort of idea. So you can see here where I have just kind of gone over some of my stamped images with some sparkle, like on the gnome's beards. I did a clear shimmer brush to kind of give them a little bit of texture. And then you can see a little bit of my splotches that I both stamped and splattered with the shimmer brush. I hope you enjoyed it. If you see anything you like, feel free to check out the links below for both products and my blog and my website. Thanks for watching.